cataract practice surgeon and CEO of VirtuaLens. And I'm a practicing ophthalmologist. I do cataract refractive surgery. I'm relatively full-time still doing this. Um, and so we're going to take a little time tonight and just walk through what this is, where it came from, why we need it, and how it's going to improve people's practices. And we have a really incredible panel with us tonight. I'm very, very thankful that each of them have joined us. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce. We've got Bob. Is this me? We've got Dr. Bob Osher. He's with Cincinnati Eye Institute. His reputation precedes him. He's been a part of innovation and new technology and really leading the charge in stuff like this for decades and decades. And we've been fortunate to have him along the journey for a lot of it. And so he was there a year ago is when he first saw this device or had a baby. Okay, and we got Carrie Jacobs here. She's the outgoing president of ASOA. She's the executive vice president of True Vision. So she knows how to run practices, how to make things efficient, and she's a really, really great resource on to how to institute this. We're going to be talking a lot about that tonight. And then we have Doug Koch, Dr. Doug Koch now from Baylor, and he's also been around for years and years. I saw him when I was still a resident many years ago. And we're very thankful to be a part of starting team. We have Dr. Alex Spratt. He's trained at Mooresville for glaucoma, also vascular for glaucoma, and he's got a thriving practice in South Florida with 4 patients. And so I'll go through a quick presentation just about what we're talking about, and then we're going to have a discussion about how we use it, how it's instituted, and kind of how it might be applicable to each and every one of us in this room. But the first thing is, why do we need this? Why is there a problem? And really, the reason that this was developed, it was birthed out of my clinic. And for the last 15 years is when I started my practice, we've been trying to educate patients on these lenses, this concept, these kind of difficult optical processes using verbal explanations. We've been using 2D pamphlets and brochures. And over, we kind of see these blank stares and this kind of this lack of understanding. And at some point, it was like, we have to figure out a better way to do this. And so the idea is very, very simple. Is we take these outdated processes and we use all the technology available now to make a better way. But you can imagine, we all know that we have these older patients in our chairs, and we try to explain a multifocal or toric, or try to explain to a myope that wants to get a toric separate distance, and they just don't understand these concepts. And so we believe that what we're using now is outdated, it's antiquated, and it's not really adequate. And we think our patients deserve better. So what we've done is we've created a 3D immersive environments that patients can essentially try on lenses before they use it. So instead of doing 2D, we've done 3D. So the idea here is in the 3D environments, we can set filters and settings, and we can create a 3D model of each of these lenses so they can test drive them before they have to use them. And very quickly, very efficiently, they can try on this VR headset. We can take into these essentially these different locales in everyday environments that they're using, and they can try them out first. And it really helps them kind of take the edge off and understand. One of the other advantages of this is we can actually show the family members, because oftentimes these patients are put in and they have a family member with them. And a lot of times the patient has a tough time with this concept. So we can very quickly take it from the patient directly over to the. So most of us have used VR before. So what is this? And this is a very simple concept. This is a VR product, and we're using a tablet to control it. So the patient wears the VR headset, and the counselor, the doctor, the tech, whoever is in the clinic, controls what the patient is seeing in the tablet. It's small. The footprint is incredibly small. You could fit this on your desk. You fit it on an exam link. Fit it almost anywhere. It's untethered. It's wireless. It runs on a Bluetooth connection. So it's Wi-Fi. It updates, but the Bluetooth is what is connected. So even if you have an area that has very full Wi-Fi, And people have used it in the exam lane. People use it with counseling. You could use it out in the waiting room. So you can use it virtually anywhere. So this is the patient's in a 3D environment. So they're looking around. You can see there's three distinct areas there. It's distance, it's intermediate, it's close. There's filters on the side that you can adjust. But this is all really, really intuitive. The patient is just experiencing. They don't have to listen. They don't have to, go through a pamphlet. They don't have to read about it. They literally experience it. You can create different filters for different lenses, monofocal, toric, EDOF. You could create specific ones for PureC and optics. But this is what we're seeing. They're in this environment. Hopefully you guys will be able to use it and try it on. We'll experience that they literally look around and they experience these settings. The design, the idea behind this was to create this as simple as intuitive as possible. It was developed in my clinic, so it had to be simple enough for me to understand. And we made it simple enough for any staff to understand. So if you look here, we've got a set of filters on the side. We have a set of lenses on the side, and we have a set of scenes at the top. So you go to a different scene, and you pick the lens you want to show them, and that's it. And then they look around these 3D settings and then understand very, very quickly. The footprint is tiny. This is it. This is everything. There is the VR headset and there's the tablet. We found this really, really helpful because in a lot of clinics, they'll leave this around you in the room. They'll use it both in the room and in the counselor's office. But this is, you could fit this almost anywhere. So the process is easy. You choose a scene, and we've got 6 different scenes. We've got an office scene. We've got a night driving scene, which is a really popular one. We've got a late coma scene, which is really just for fun. Then we've got a golf scene. We've got a cooking scene. We've got a reading in bed scene. And in each of those scenes, you just select the lenses you want to show that patient. And then they just take a couple seconds and look around. So the whole process for my counselor, it takes her just around 3 minutes to show the entire selection. So why is this important? Because premium lenses are important. What we're seeing as far as the business of medicine, if we can't do premium lenses, it's hard to say in practice now. And they're becoming a bigger and bigger part of what we do. The driving force is the volume's going up as we get a higher aging population. The patients are getting more demanding, and we're getting better technology. So if we can bridge the gap between what they understand and what we can offer, then usually they're going to understand enough to make the right choice. So a question we get a lot of the time is, what can we do? What kind of lenses can we simulate? And the answer is pretty much any lens. Any lens can be simulated. You just have to set the filters where you would have a patient. So you have all these different filters. You pick what you want, you save it as that lens, and you come back and you say, hey, here's what the PureC looks like. Here's what the Odyssey looks like. Here's what the Panoptix looks like. We can simulate cataracts. We can simulate astigmatism, myopia, hyperopia. We have a few refractive practices that are using this for preoperative LASIK and ICLs. The visual effects, you can separate near, intermediate, and far. We've got halos, we've got glare, starburst, contrast. We have a chromophore setting, yellowing. We have pretty much any filter you need to create the lens that you desire. So one of the big things that we've developed here is there's a traditional way to use this, to where you're sitting across from a patient or a counselor or a tech, and they walk through these different lenses. We've also developed a different mode that we can use. It's called a self-guided mode. With the self-guided mode, the idea behind that is a lot of us use videos now to educate the patient, where you put the drops in, you walk out of the room, and they watch a video. What we've developed here is a video to where there's a short intro on cataract surgery, different lens options, and different working distances. And then it goes into a customized 3D education that goes through all the lens that you desire for them to see. So it lasts anywhere between 7 and 10 minutes, depending on how many lens. But the benefit of this is you don't need any trained staff. So for practices that don't have a counselor, that don't have people they trust to go through these, You can put this on them. You can press play. You can walk out of the room and you come back, and they've got a pretty good idea of what you're going to be talking about when you're going through this. And so what we've done, I'll talk over this, guys. So what we've created, we used AI and we created an avatar that, and the strength of that is this is translated into how many different languages? We've got 10 different languages that you can present to patients, and it takes 3 seconds to switch. So if you've got a patient that comes in that speaks Mandarin or Korean or Portuguese or Spanish, um, English as well. We definitely have English. You can put this on their head, walk out, and they have a pretty good education, even if you don't have a translator there. So the way that we see this is a win-win-win for the entire eye care community. It's a win for patients because they deserve a good education. I always tell patients, I'm not a salesman here. I'm an educator and a facilitator. When you've gotten to a point where you can comfortably choose and confidently choose a lens that's right for you, then we've done a good job. And that's where this came out of. I've been saying that for years, and I feel like this really makes it happen. Doctors benefit because this is really quick. It's reproducible because you can show the same thing to everybody. You can have any staff member show them this high quality presentation. And IOL companies like it because better education usually leads to higher premium adoption, because we've always felt that the biggest gap between patients adopting premium technology is education. And without them truly experiencing these lenses, it's hard for them to understand what's the benefit of it. So the ROI. So, for any product that because I own a clinic, I've run a clinic for, a long time now. So with any product I buy, is what makes this worthwhile? Why would I want this on my clinic? And the return on investment on this is just astronomical. So not to even mention the time. The time is money too. But in this case, if one patient a month feels comfortable enough to upgrade, this pays for itself many times over. So as far as the economics of this, it's really incredible. It pays for itself so quickly, and it makes our lives easier. That's it. I wanted to keep that really short to give enough time to kind of open this up to the panel. It's if they've got a 2080 cataract, 2100 cataract, it's going to be difficult because you can put anything in front of them. It's not going to be great. But in that circumstance, that's where the family members are for. That's where we put this on the family member. Said, hey, you're going to help your loved one make this decision. So I want you to try this out. And then, so it's our panel can speak. Doug, you've talked about this before, okay?
I'm thinking 2030, 2040 is really still very comfortable. In my offer, they're 2050, 2060 with our particular eye chart, they're not seeing well. And his son, of our family member, it didn't sound.
Yeah. Oftentimes the family member making the decision. So we'll just, I think the more information, the more understanding, the better. And they're going to trust their family member more than, the team they dismount. So that's a family member. It happens.
Mic on. We had this discussion a moment ago. Good. Okay. Here's the story in a nutshell. That took 30 minutes. I want to tell you in 1 minute. I've spent a career trying to educate patients. And it's exasperating. No matter how much time I spend with the patient, at the end, they always ask me a question that makes me feel like I did not do an adequate job. And the bottom line is that once they've had this on their head, and I do it in the waiting room before where their pupil is dilated, they come in and they tell you which lens they want. It's a fantastic preview that gives the patient confidence, and no longer will you ever see buyer's remorse in your practice. Once the patient is truly educated and they can make a decision with confidence, it's a great time saver for me. I work with John and I really respect John a lot. I don't care if a person has a decision for a premium lens or not. It makes no difference to me. but I do care that they can make a decision. It is absolutely the best decision for their situation. And that's what this technology does over and over. My clinic loves it. Cincinnati Eye Institute loves it. The patients love it. It is disruptive technology. When we introduced video to teach patients about lenses, about different phaco techniques or whatever, that was disruptive. This makes that look like it's obsolete. And I feel very grateful and privileged to be able to be on the cutting edge, because the patients, the clinic, everyone really benefits.
You get to a really great point where it's not always about a premium lens. Think about that patient in your practice that right now he still got this obsolete. They're like, oh yeah, it's fine. I was 5 years afterward. Okay, now your team is trial framing. They're giving them that in your life. How about putting that on in the reality of their day-to-day life? Or the opposite. I keep buying the distance. I'm fine. I'll wear my reader. No big deal. But then they're not realizing that they're always going to get that trade-off. So this is also a really, really useful tool in helping them see how their life day-to-day will be, even taking the premium IOL out of it.
In my experience, there are two things that really stand out. One is it removed the gray zone in the selection of a trifocal or not. You know, that gray zone going, I like it, what's it going to be like? If you show them the halo and glare and you show them the benefit of veneer, to Terry's point, all of a sudden they go, I don't want any of that glare, or, oh my God, that glare is nothing. I want that range of vision. That's one group. The other one that's, to me, even more valuable is it really helps patients understand toric IOL. Because it's hard to explain the blur, and you can program this thing to whatever blur you want to make it, you can make it so they can't see anything. But I program it for just enough blur that I think reflects about a 1 dioptric toric, and it shows in the distance target and with it and without it. And they really understand the trade-offs. And in almost, I would say 95% of the time, they go for a toric lens. And they're very happy with that afterward. So these patients are empowered to make the choice. They've kind of experienced it. And the other thing is, you'll have patients come in, on the 3-week visits, and you'll say, my friend got the multifocal IOL. How come did you even mention that to me? And of course you did in the conversation, but they don't remember it. But if you put the bloody headset on, they're going to remember it, right? So they're going to remember it, and that also really, helps you with your patient satisfaction.
Yeah, we'll hit that. We can hit that right now if you want to.
Let's do that, because
can
I
do
just found out 5 minutes ago that Doug and I do it differently. And Doug's usually right. But in my practice, we have 2 approaches. For the routine patient, we put it on automatic and they watch it while they're dilating. And that's very efficient, and it pays dividends with my time and their confidence. However, if the patient comes in with known macular degeneration and they're not going to be a multifocal candidate or whatever you think, we can program it specifically to which lenses we think they're going to be a good candidate for. And Doug, you should comment, because you do it a little differently, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I like doing it while they're dilating also, but what I do is I already narrow it down. I don't want patients trying to juggle 6 choices, because then they get confused. If possible, I'd like to narrow it down to 2 choices, maybe 3. I think now with the Pure C coming out, it's going to be monofocal distance or near if they're a long-term myo, extended depth of focus, or trifocal. And the trifocal was showed in the dysphotopsia, the extended depth of focus to show them a little bit that you might get with a Pure C, their immutable halo maybe, and then a monofocal. And so the patients can boom, 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 make the choice. I think if you give them, in my experience, if you give them 6 choices, your conversation really gets extended, and you don't want to confuse them. Use the doctor know what you need to narrow it down that much to look in terms of how you want to nail it down.
I try and narrow it down to people.
Yeah.
And I've wired a surgical coordinator, and this device for us hasn't made it out of the surgical coordinator room into the dilation room or anywhere. I send the patient there with my handwritten note saying, I like a handwritten note, my signature, I trust that while you describe the accompaniment. And I say, I think the best option for you is X, and otherwise you're a candidate for another option. And then we go and see the surgical coordinator. He looks in our sheets and said, okay, well, Dr. Spratt thinks the multifocal with a pre-signaling correction is going to be best. Let's have a look at it and pop the eye. And the patient enjoys it. And then the other option too is probably for them what insurance public. And then they have a choice to make. If they want to come back and say, is there a middle of the road option held out a signaling correction to distance? Well, then my surgery coordinator will say, yeah, that's an option for you here, and let's have a look at it. But I tried to get, I prefer two voices. Partly, I think people don't remember the first thing and the last thing double. Maybe not much in the middle. In which case, I'd rather go with one option, but I didn't.
So you made a comment that I want to emphasize. You said the patient enjoys. The patients love this technology. I mean, they really love it. They come in and I say, did you have a good experience with the headset? And they're blown away. They say, that's fantastic. Nobody ever showed me something like that. They are really satisfied. And I think that's part of what we try to achieve as physicians is a happy patient. And this is really good.
I think too in the multifocal arena, a patient may say, oh, I'm fine with glare and halo. I should do that right now. But this headset, the simulation of it and being able to drive the degree of the glare is super important because the patient may say, and we all know as a multifocal, an unhappy multifocal ruins your life, right? So you don't need a whole bunch of unhappy multifocals when you can simulate glare and halo. It may most likely be worse than what they'll experience. Then they can make that informed decision. So if like, whoa, I can't tolerate this. Great. Now let's talk about what you can tolerate. So your expectation meeting, that's, I think, one of the most critical intrusive of this device is you're able to meet the patients where they're at and not overpromise and help them understand where what their personal eyes see. Because we can't see to their eyes over makeup.
In the past, I've kind of tended to really shy away from diffractive technology in patients who have, 20/25 minus cataracts, mild cataracts, thinking that they're not going to like the glare, that they're coming in complaining of their vision at an early level of glare and at an early level of visual impairment, hence won't like any glare. So you put the headset on, and I'm always surprised by what they say. A lot of them will say, no, I don't want the glare, but many of them will say, I really like that idea of the drink vision, and they get happy with it. So you never quite know, and this just helped to figure it out.
Doug and I are old enough that we remember the feeling of seeing the phaco when we were trained with extracat. We remember the feeling of seeing a foldable soft lens when we were used to putting in large PMMA optics.
I remember that.
I have a photographic memory that doesn't develop anymore either, Don. This is disruptive. This technology is the same thing. It's guaranteed to succeed. It's guaranteed to get rid of the long explanations that all of us experience with our patients. It's guaranteed to be a home run. It's a preview of what the patient gets, and they choose with confidence, and they no longer will be ever a patient that you have buyer's remorse. So I congratulate Matteo. I congratulate John. I know Doug and I were in this very early, and I'm telling you, we won't have conferences like this in 3 or 4 years. Everybody will be using some form of immersive 3D technology.
This is to tell you as if he's a co-founder, and I'm not a computer guy, so he made this happen.
Don, you mentioned it. I really agree with Alan. Most of my patients have never done virtual reality, and I think I've done like one. So one of the really fun things about it is how surprised they are by the imaging. And and they really feel, you know, like they're getting something very special, that's new, and it helps them feel like your practice and what you're doing for them is very cutting edge, which it really is. It's intriguing that way.
It's been fun to watch it evolve too, because even just a year ago, we didn't have the options of monovision. We didn't have the options of a chromophore. The images were not nearly as sophisticated and pixelated, or wherever the right term is, Matteo. I mean, this is an evolving technology that just keeps getting better and better and better.